Yo, what is up? Welcome to Ninja Geek Games and Happy New Year. 2022 was a big year for gaming with some great releases both through retail and Kickstarter. In this video, I want to share my top 5 solo games that I played in 2022. Why solo, you ask? Well, I now have friends, but none want to play with me. I jest, of course, I have no friends. Before we begin, I just want to say a big thank you to all those who supported the channel last year, whether a publisher, designer or viewer, and if you enjoy the video, please give it a like and subscribe. Okay, let's go. At number 5 is the gritty and dark themed The Everrain from Grimlord Games. I know there was some controversy regarding the delay in getting this to backers from its Kickstarter campaign, but I was lucky enough to pick this up at UK Games Expo. This is a cooperative game, so obviously can be played solo, and has a great theme where the world is flooding due to the coming of an ancient being which has a Lovecraftian feel to it. You represent the captain of a ship and head out into the unknown to discover mysteries and progress through various acts before the Elder One awakens. Sounds quite familiar. The game board has an expanding map revealing rough seas, islands, shipwrecks and storms that you must navigate through using your crew. The player board shows various areas of your ship deck where you can move your crew miniatures through the use of order tokens, and your ship can be upgraded during the game with improvements and cannons, so you get ship development as the game progresses. You'll need to think carefully about where to place your upgraded artillery cards within your ship, because at times you'll meet enemy ships and so movement and facing becomes important during sea combat. Also, mutant enemies can clamber aboard and damage your ship, but you'll get spoils from defeating them through a simple combat mechanic of rolling dice. Yes, this seems luck-based, but proper preparation allows a strategic edge. The crew you hire will all have different roles, such as surgeons and basic deckhands, as well as positive and negative traits, which is an awesome part of the game. Here, crew members may enable you to roll extra dice in combat, but might also be a drunk, meaning that when you visit the port, they'll scurry away to the nearest tavern and gamble and drink away your coin before you can pay their wages. As these are selected randomly, you get a vast array of combinations of crew to manage with each game. At port, you can visit markets, the local inn and shipwright locations, to name a few, where you'll send crew to engage in their services. The story is dark and foreboding, which I love, where you'll be drawing event cards with various options to choose, story cards that will cross over into other decks that builds a deeper narrative, and you'll also come across NPCs that you can interact with. Yes, the theme and story are the strongest element of the game, but the Everrain appears to be a mashup of Cthulhu Death May Die, Arkham Horror and Pirates of the Caribbean, which can only be a good thing. Story progression and exploration is great, as well as deciding whether to improve your ship or hire crew at ports. You'll also have side missions to complete that allow you to gain treasures and trinkets along the way. Although the rulebook is a heavy read, the main reason that the Everrain didn't hit a higher spot is that the endgame is not as engaging as I would have hoped. You need to progress through the acts and reach the end of the discovery track before the Elder One awakens. This is fine as you get to explore, fight, upgrade and spend in a way you see fit to complete your mission. But if the Elder One awakens, you'd expect the game to culminate in a mighty battle using skills and equipment that you've gained during the game. Instead, the Elder One has an objective and cannot be destroyed. You need to continue with the game with regards to the discovery track, attacking the Elder One only to reduce its dice value. It then becomes a race of who can complete their objective first, which is a little lackluster. Regardless, the Everrain is an incredibly good horror game with an immersive world that has fantastic components, especially the miniatures. At 4 is the colourful and fantastically illustrated Bitoku, a Euro game with worker placement mechanics using dice. You represent a spirit of the forest where you need to make use of pilgrims and guardians, as well as build structures and link both dragonflies and Mitapa spirits in order to become the next great spirit of the forest yourself. At first glance, when picking up the box or seeing it on the table, it does appear to be a heavy and complex game with lots going on. That's somewhat true, but the game is simpler than it seems, if only by a little. Firstly, the board is excessively large, where the actual play area is relatively small and the rest of the board is actually for storing game components and forming market-like areas. I like the action selection mechanic here, where you can play cards onto your player board and move dice onto the action spaces on the main board. Played cards allow you to carry out special abilities, and as you can build other cards into your deck, you have a good deal of decision making just for this action. This unlocks dice where you can place them onto the board to carry out main actions, but the value of your dice dictates the strength of that action. These dice can also be moved to other areas on the main board that allow you to draft cards or carry out other options, but doing this decreases the dice values for the next round. The complexity of the game comes with the additional tiles and tracks that you need to keep an eye on. Structures you build provide bonuses if you activate them with dice of specific values. Some actions allow you to move pilgrims across a track for virtue points, but come to a halt unless you've collected and completed a number of Bitoku spirit cards. Each of the 5 main actions on the board comes with a special track for treasures that will increase when you place a building or take a particular action that provide additional virtue points at the end of the game. You can claim dragonfly tiles that do nothing on their own, but if combined with Mittima tiles provide an instant bonus action or ability that you can take. Some tiles such as crystals allow engine building that provide resources each round, virtue points anytime you carry out the required action, or a bonus ability if you place cards in that area of your player board. Yes, the game has a lot of moving parts and seems overwhelming at first, but these all link together quite seamlessly and is very rewarding when one action provides a multitude of abilities and rewards due to your careful planning. There are lots of ways to score virtue points to win the game, but my favourite is through the vision cards that set requirements for resources and tiles collected during the game. Therefore, it pays to select carefully what you need from the market area, because these and other tiles can provide a great deal of points if you have the right combination of specific tiles. The AI is cleverly done, using action cards where it blocks actions and takes tiles and becomes a decent challenge to play against, although you can alter its difficulty. Every action, ability, card and tile in the game is provided with very clear icons and no text. Again, this can seem overwhelming at first, but the game comes with a handy player aid that fully supports this, and the rules, although long, are very clear. The only thing I would like is for the AI action tree to be printed out separately rather than being at the end of the rulebook, to prevent new players from flicking back and forth through the rules each turn. Every round the game will play through the seasons for prepping and playing actions, but you don't roll any dice. Taking additional actions reduces the dice values, but some resources can increase them, allowing you to take those better actions who are quite sought after. The game has wonderful components and artwork with a lovely theme that brings in Japanese terminology, which is a nice touch. Once you get used to the areas of the board for taking actions, the game flows well, that links flawlessly with the various tracks and the endgame scoring mechanics that has high replay value. At number 3 is the deck builder Moonrakers, where you take on the role of a smuggler completing various contracts to reap rewards in the form of money, ship upgrades, crew and prestige. Ultimately, you're looking to score prestige, but in order to do this you need to upgrade your basic deck with crew and action cards and enhance your ship with improved parts, but these cost money in the form of credits. I really like the way you earn these rewards in the game. You need to select a contract card that indicates which rewards can be claimed if you successfully complete it by playing the required cards from your hand. The more difficult the contract, the better the rewards. For solo play, you're up against a mercenary AI that reveals 5 cards each round. Now, some of the contracts provide a great deal of rewards, but are too challenging to complete on your own. And in this instance, you need to borrow cards from the mercenary's play area. But as they're a mercenary, borrowing means pay for. Depending on the card type, the borrowed cards will cost you some of your spoils, so you need to compare what rewards are available over the benefit of the mercenary's card. Also, you only get one action each turn, and that is to play one of your own cards. But each card from your own hand provides an ability, such as take another action or draw a card, so you can create a chain link of actions in your play area on top of what you are using from the mercenary, which makes this quite a strategic game. There is a little bit of luck involved, as each contract may require you to roll hazard dice, meaning you'll need to play additional cards to avoid them. However, improvements to your ship or hired crew cards can negate or reduce this. Your hard-earned cash can be used to purchase these crew and ship part cards from a market area. Ship parts provide ongoing abilities or reactive bonus actions, and crew cards buff your deck, and you'll need to balance out claiming these as both become very useful. Playing solo is a beat your own score game within 10 rounds, but I don't mind this. Upgrading your ship to provide you with some great abilities and chain linking cards for a huge chunk of the spoils is very rewarding, even if you have to share some with the mercenary. You can also gain additional prestige by completing mission objectives if you meet the requirements. The quality of the game components and artwork are amazing and really fit the theme of the game, and its quick setup time and high replay value makes this a great game. At number 2 is another big Euro game, Golem. Golem from Cranio Creations. This game has a wonderful setting, Prague in the 1500s, based around the fascinating legend of Golem. Here you can take actions to gain knowledge for books, produce artifacts and create golems as well as set them to work. Due to the vast array of components, setup can be a bit laborious, but once you get past it, it's a very elegant game. There is a little asymmetry for each time you set up your player board, as you have artifact sideboard extensions to select and a choice of starting tiles that provide different combinations of resources and track increases. First off, the components are awesome, with boards and tiles filled with easily identifiable icons and symbols, which supports making the game fairly easy to play. The main board is laid out with the streets of Prague in 3 colours and areas for cards and destroyed golems without looking too cumbersome. The synagogue structure is a fantastic display used for taking actions, which I really like, and where trying to become the first player can be very beneficial. You get to load this building with marbles of various colours that separate into action rows. When you take an action, you select a marble, and the strength of the action is based on the number of marbles in that area. The colour of marble selected is also important because your student meeples get to move through the associated streets of Prague, which supports income later in the round, and if they meet the requirements of the character cards, you get a nice bonus too. At the synagogue, there are also action tiles available that will change each round, where you can place your rabbi meeple, and therefore the game offers a huge array of variability of action combinations for every single game. The actions are fairly simple, some with a choice that require resources gained from it or from previous turns, but the complexity comes from planning ahead and building a nice little engine. Each street contains tiles associated with either knowledge and books, golden coin or clay and golem activation. These are activated by golems that run rampant through the streets that will eventually cost you knowledge or victory points to control. That is, unless you choose to destroy and rebuild. Creating more golems will increase their movement, resulting in a destructive cycle, but you can upgrade golems with developments to activate them more regularly and score victory points at the end of the game. Developing artifacts can be difficult to master, but provide both immediate resources and income, and you can also claim books that provide ongoing benefits with a nice purchasing mechanic based on the position of the card in the market and its colour. You do have a lot of options each round, but with only 3 actions available to you, and the fact the AI in solo play also takes marbles and action tiles at the synagogue, you need to plan around this, where you are left with some difficult decisions. I want to take this marble to move 2 students through the streets, but if I take this colour, the action is more powerful and I get a nice little bonus from the character cards. Moving students and golems through the streets is important because income and action tiles are generally more beneficial the further along they are, but some actions require you to move them back, which can be a blessing or a curse. The solo mode is great fun, with the AI uses cards for action selection, where you follow pretty simple criteria to choose an action, which does feel quite intuitive. Each round has 7 steps, but the game only has 4 rounds, so you get a total of 12 actions each game, which doesn't seem a lot. However, a lot of actions have multiple steps, so you could gain knowledge, upgrade a development, buy a book and then activate that development, as well as carry out the actions gained from the book, such as buying gold to upgrade an artifact that produces you with resources at that moment ready for the next action. Again, this game looks overly complex, as it does take up a lot of table space and there are a lot of moving parts, but it's not clunky and plays elegantly, where your first action of a turn will hopefully support your last and the income phase. Solo play takes about an hour and the rules are clearly laid out with lots of examples, which really helps understand the game. Endgame scoring comes from a multitude of areas to include your location on tracks, how far students have moved through the streets, and how many upgrades you've developed. And it's nice to have a deep Euro that doesn't create analysis paralysis, because if your action is blocked, you will likely find ways around this without having to outstare the board. Overall, this is definitely my favourite Euro game played last year. So here we are, my number one game played in 2022. The majority of games on my list so far have been quite heavy, deep games with a great theme, and my number one game is no exception, and it's Euthia Torment of Resurrection from Dia Games. This is a story-driven fantasy adventure of epic proportions in a sandbox game so big I can't have the game box on the table next to me. Think Gloomhaven's Big Brother. Here, you take on the role of a mighty hero of legend where you must travel the land to fight enemies, visit places of trade, mine for precious gems, and interact with spectral beings trying to gain reputation. This game is scenario based, each vastly different with varying levels of difficulty and play length, where you get to play against rampaging golems and invoke dark magic to fight dragons. Yes, the game has a ton of content, but not all of it is used for every scenario, but the game does take up a huge amount of table space. Character development is by far one of the best mechanics I've seen in any adventure game. When you think Runebound, you get a better weapon and a skill or two, or a piece of armour. But with Euthia, your hero board has slots for gauntlets, chest plates, helmets, jewellery and trinkets, as well as weapons. Heroes are able to gain skill upgrades that lead them down specific paths to include becoming a thief or an assassin. Mining allows you to find precious gems that can upgrade equipment to provide extra actions or combat abilities, but you may have to unlock equipment slots before they're available, and this is different for each of the 5 heroes. The map expands with exploration, creating an open world with tiles selected based on the scenario, resulting in an ever-changing landscape with each game. For a big game, actions are simple to take by spending limited tokens, where the end result is usually combat to liberate an area before taking advantage of the location. Combat against enemies is engaging, requiring choices between equipment and abilities, and can be pretty brutal, so expect to take damage. It's dice based but eliminates luck in most circumstances. You can spend resources or equipment to re-roll, and in solo play you'll be drawing combat cards to boost enemy abilities to heal them or hinder your hero. And if this takes place next to elementals, their presence can vastly affect combat outcome for better or worse. The market areas at places of trade show available tiles for that particular location, where you can also sell your wares for cash. Encounter areas allow you to complete side quests where you must return with goods or the carcass of dead enemies. And with the volume of equipment tiles, enemies, encounter cards and map tiles to name a few, you have an epic game with exceptionally high replay value. You can play the same scenario twice and have a different map layout, equipment and new branching pathway of skills with different enemies to fight. For me, this is possibly the best adventure game I've played ever. I love Runebound and Mage Knight, but think Euthia offers better scenarios, character development, combat with less analysis paralysis, but with enough options for big turns where loot and reputation pour in. The game is not complex, but deep enough to require your full attention. Combat has some novel mechanics, and upgrading equipment with gems you mine yourself is great. It's like a little reward. The game comfortably sits in my all-time top 5 as it's so immersive and challenging, which is exactly what I want in a solo game. So that's it, my top 5 solo games played in 2022. Let me know in the comments what you think of my choices and what yours are. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the subscribe button. This is Ninja Geek Games. Cheers.